High-band IELTS essays rarely present only one side of an issue. Instead, they show that the writer understands other perspectives and can respond to them. Concession and contrast language is how you do that in a clear, controlled way. In this lesson, we'll look at the key words and structures you need. First, let's look at contrast in compound sentences. When you want to join two ideas that are in opposition, you can use coordinating conjunctions like but and yet, or conjunctive adverbs like however. For example, the government had intended to invest in education, but the costs turned out to be too high. Or, the government had intended to invest in education, however the costs turned out to be too high. In the second sentence, however is used with a semicolon before and a comma after. These structures are simple but very effective. They allow you to present a plan or expectation in the first clause, and then show an obstacle or contrast in the second. This is common when discussing policies that sound good in theory but face practical limitations. Now let's move to concession in complex sentences. Concession means you admit or concede a point, but then show why your main argument still stands. Useful words here include although, even though, despite, the fact that, and in spite of, the fact that. For example, although the government had intended to invest in education, the cost turned out to be too high. Or, despite the fact that the government had intended to invest in education, the cost turned out to be too high. These structures are particularly useful when you write opinion and discussion essays. You might concede a disadvantage or a criticism of your position and then explain why the advantages are still greater, or why the criticism is not sufficient to change your overall view. There are also direct contrast words like while and whereas. They are often used to compare two trends or situations. For example, while the investment in education is expected to decrease, the budget for defence will likely grow. Or, whereas some people argue that art should be prioritised in schools, others believe that core academic subjects deserve more classroom time. These sentences clearly set up two opposing views. In your body paragraphs, you can use concession and contrast to structure your argument. For instance, you might start a paragraph by acknowledging a common belief. Many people argue that paying employees sick leave would be too expensive for businesses. Then, you use concession language to show your response. Although there are short-term costs involved, the long-term benefits in terms of productivity and staff retention are likely to outweigh these expenses. Here, you concede the cost but maintain your position. Using this language well shows examiners that your argument is balanced and mature. You are not ignoring other views, you are engaging with them. This can positively influence both your task response and your coherence and cohesion scores, as well as your grammar score if the structures are accurate. A good practice exercise is to take a simple opinion, such as, online education is better than traditional classroom learning. Write one sentence that supports it completely. Then write another sentence that begins with although or while to acknowledge a drawback, and finally a sentence that reasserts your main view. For example, online education offers greater flexibility for students. Although some learners miss the face-to-face interaction of traditional classrooms, the ability to study at any time and from any location makes online courses particularly attractive for working adults. You've now produced a mini-argument using concession. In your essays, aim to use concession or contrast language at least a few times, especially in opinion and discussion tasks. Even a simple, however, or even though, can add sophistication to your writing when used appropriately. In the next lesson, we'll tie many of these grammar tools together through the recipe linking technique, which gives you a practical step-by-step method for developing body paragraphs. If you haven't already, download the coursebook through the link below. It expands on this lesson and will guide you through the other videos.